So, Mr. Rogers was my stepdad.
Bruh.
All right. If you're watching this, this is another video episode of Forget What You Heard. I'm your boy, Sir. In case you didn't know, 2020 podcast representative, probably somewhere right here. I just made it magically appear. But this is a new segment that I'm going to start doing videos for. And I'm going to drop these probably every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or whenever time kind of fits in my schedule. But this is Forget What You Heard. And as you probably saw the intro, which I probably just decided to keep just now. But anyway, if you just watched the intro, we're talking about Mr. Rogers. Now, if you don't know who Mr. Rogers is, probably because you're too young, or maybe you had cable your whole life. You know, I wasn't rich. But anyway, we were blessed to be PBS kids. If you know what a PBS kid is, you're probably one of them. Listen, way back in the 90s, in the midst of the heyday of like Golden Girls and Matlock and Walker, Texas Ranger, we had cartoons. You know, Fox Kids had its own thing with like more famous stuff like Tiny Toon Adventures, Power Rangers, Beetleborgs, Tom and Jerry Kids, Batman the Animated Series, all the greats of the 90s. But there was one other channel that just had hit after hit after hit after hit that was slept on if you had cable. You know, even some people that had cable had a grandma who didn't have cable who used to make them watch PBS. I'm talking about Wishbone. I'm talking about Clifford the Big Red Dog. I'm talking about Sesame Street, Mr. Neighborhood. What else did we used to watch? Puzzle Place. I'm talking about slept on great shows. And even they had this one show called Zoom. Zoom was like this. It's like science-y / educational Saturday Night Live kind of. It's like if all that was ran by Christians who were educational. Like it wasn't anything racy on it, but it was like science experiments, like little word puzzles and stuff. And man, I'm just thinking back on all the old shows we used to watch. Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? Oh, that was my junk. There was it was like a game show where you had to track Carmen Sandiego, and there was like a villain of the day. Man, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go and look for the Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego game show. Lit. It had this one thing at the end where they had a huge map on the floor, and you had like these red markers, and the host would call the location, and you have to go put the mark on the location in like a minute. And if you won something great. Was back then great stuff was like a year's subscription to National Geographic, something like that. Stupid stuff now that kids would scoff at. But anyway, man, I just wanted to be on the show. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Hey, it was lit. They had an acapella group that would sing the intro on the episodes, and it was dope. But anyway, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about my favorite show. I'm talking about the GOAT himself, the one and only Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Now, let me tell you something. If you don't know who Mr. Rogers is, Mr. Rogers was an older white gentleman. Yes, he was Caucasian, who would invite us time and time again to spend time with him at his place. He would come in from work or wherever he'd be. He'd take off his jacket, put on a cardigan, zip it up, take off his shoes one by one, all while singing the intro, asking you to be his neighbor. That's all he wanted to be. He didn't ask you for anything. He didn't ask you for money. He didn't ask you if you had a hard day. It didn't matter, because at the end of the day, what mattered was, would you be his neighbor? Now that I hear it, it's probably some other tones under that, you know. Like you could play that in a variety of ways. You know, you could probably be like racially, you know, let's unify, let's become neighbors. Would you Be My Neighbor, you know. And this is an old show. This was like 70s, 80s, 90s. Like, this was an old show. And he would, it wasn't just him in his house. He would show us these videos on how stuff was made. This was way before the show How It's Made came to be. Way before Mythbusters and all that. No. And I'll tell you something else. He had the first flat screen TV that just so happened to be a picture on the wall. It was wall mounted, cuz. First wall mounted TV screen. Mr. Rogers, look it up. Telling you. It used to be a picture, but then he'd go down to where the DVDs was. You know what I'm saying? He had a little stash. He'd slide the DVD in there, and that picture would change to a movie. Nice little transition. But the concept was there. And then there was a whole nother segment. That was the trolley. Now, what the trolley was your transport to this mythical world where there were puppets and humans who got along. The world wasn't very large because it was our imagination and budget constraints, because this was PBS, public broadcasting, which was funded by viewers like you. Never mind. But anyway, the trolley would go through the hole and come out at this other imaginary world where there was king, a witch, a cat that lived in a clock, like a huge clock for some reason. Don't ask me why he lived in the clock. I wonder how much rent was to live in the clock. Then again, I wonder if it was gentrification, because all the white folks was over here in this castle and the cat was in the clock. So I wonder if the cat had the castle and then somehow got the land. I wonder if it's the Walton family, the people that own Walmart. That probably did. Let me stop. But anyway, there would be like half Mr. Rogers, half, I forgot the name of the place. And Mr. Rogers, I'm pretty sure, was voice acting some of the characters, because all you could see was the puppets. But they had full dramas going on. Like, sometimes some people would be beefing. Well, not beefing. Sometimes there'd be a misunderstanding. Somebody be mad. And, they had to talk it out. You know what I'm saying? They taught you basic life skills and communication and social skills necessary for kids. And I used to watch this show faithfully. Like, it used to come on when I would be away from school. I would come home, and because after a while, after a certain point, they'd re-loop everything that played earlier that day. So I would watch it. You know what I'm saying? I'm sitting here like 9, 10, watching this stuff that's years old, And even when I was sick, I would stay home from school from being sick. I would watch Mr. Rogers. There's 3 things you got to watch when you sick. You're going to watch Mr. Rogers, The Price is Right, and more than likely, Bold and the Beautiful, or Young and the Restless. Whatever, you watch the intro to that show, because usually when Price is Right going off, Bold and the Beautiful or Young and the Restless is coming on. So everybody know the song, the little piano, dum, 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 dum. And then you got Bold and the Beautiful. I forgot how the theme song goes, like dun, 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 something like that. It sounded real cheesy. But anyway, and then you had like God and Light. I don't know why I'm going through all this memory. I went back in time because we was talking at work, and we were just sitting there just chopping it up. And we was like, yeah, I'm gonna go probably watch some on TV like back in the days. And we just got to talking. And so, man, we had Mr. Rogers, man. I remember my favorite episode was when he showed us how zippers was made. Zippers. That's my favorite episode, because it was so interesting to me. Picture me, a young mind, and I love seeing how stuff works. I love to break stuff down and put it back together. So I loved the concept of a zipper being created in front of me, like seeing how they make teeth, and then they made this little contraption, and then some lady would sew it, and they had a little narration going in the background. I'm like, oh snap, that white lady's making a zipper. She's gonna zip them together. I just wanted to see the finished product. And then after we got done, we see the finished product, a whole stack of zippers and all this stuff. And Mr. Rogers would, come talk about that's how it did with my my jacket. And sometimes, if you were lucky, Mr. Rogers would go on a field trip. He would leave and then go somewhere to show you how it's done. One time they showed us how, what's it called? Not suckers, candy canes were made. I remember one time they showed us how I think it was like salt is made, or maybe that's Sesame Street. I think Sesame Street showed us how salt was made. But yeah, it's crazy. Like all these little how-tos were shown to me, probably inspired to me by Mr. Rogers. And you know, my father wasn't in my life. I don't mind talking about it. But man, now that I think about it, he really was my stepdad. Like this man showed me a lot. He told me people skills. He was always that dream dad that you know what I'm saying, you wanted. If I could have a white dad, you know, which is kind of physically impossible, biologically impossible. But if I was to have a white dad, had to be Mr. Rogers. Just absolutely had to be. I refuse to accept any other dad than Mr. Rogers. And when I was in high school, I remember he passed away. And it messed me up, man, because, you know, you don't ever want to see your heroes die. And I think this was around the time where, like, big people started to leave, like Christopher Reeves, he passed. And then, but yeah, Mr. Rogers really messed me up. And I think they're making a movie with Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers, and I couldn't think of a better actor to play him. But always and forever, Mr. Rogers will go down in my book as the GOAT. So, Mr. Rogers, I just wanted to get on here and talk about you, tell you how you inspired this little black dude in Mobile. So, appreciate you, and you can be my neighbor any day, G. Poe up, rest in peace. Oh, shit, and how could I forget Reading Rainbow? LeVar Burton, you did that shit, you know. Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. Take a look, it's in a book, a Reading Rainbow, bitch.